Hey, hi friends, welcome to Vicreation Technologies. Today we are going to discuss about JavaScript code block. So in my last video I had explained you about the JavaScript statements. So the JavaScript statements is nothing but about it's an individual line with the semicolon. So in case of the JavaScript, it contains the operators, it contains the variables, it contains the value, it contains the semicolon, etc. But whenever there are multiple JavaScript statements and that are grouped together with the curly bracket, that we used to call it as the JavaScript code blocks. So in simple words, the JavaScript code blocks is nothing but about the combination of multiple JavaScript statements with the curly brackets. So now what is the purpose of the code blocks? So the purpose of the code block is to define statements to be executed together. Let's say for an example, there are like 10 lines of statements or 10 lines of codes are there. So like we just want to execute those statements or lines of code at a time. So and during that time we need to use the code blocks. Like whenever this happens, like whenever event happens, whenever an event occurs, so at that time we'll just call that particular code blocks, and inside that code blocks there are like multiple JavaScript statements are there are exist. And when this event occurs, so at that time, so those code block will execute, and under that code block whatever the statements are present, like let's say there can be a 10 JavaScript statements or 10 lines of code, there can be 100 lines of codes or 100 lines of statements. So like whatever the code or whatever the statements are present inside that JavaScript code blocks, so all those code will execute on the particular event. So the best example for the JavaScript code block is the function. So let me show you with the example. Like here I can say I'm going to create a function. Okay, so the function name is my function. So you can give any name as per your want. So here you can see I have created a function whose name is my function. Okay, so under this, let's say I'm going to write, let's say some 10 line of code, or let's say like 5 lines of codes. Okay, and everything. So let's say I wrote this 3 lines of JavaScript statements or 3 lines of codes inside this code block. So the best example of the JavaScript code block is the function. So here I have just created a function. So the function name is my function. So which contains these 3 lines of code. Like the first one is the document.getElement by ID, and here let me use that inner HTML. So we are just updating the inner HTML, and the second JavaScript statement is we are displaying an alert message, and the third one is the console.log, so which means we are logging a particular message in the console tab. So this is a function. Okay, and here the JavaScript code block, what exactly it will do. So whenever any type of event, let's say on click event or any like any other type of event, like on blur event or any type of event occurs, then during that time this function we are just going to call, and this function is nothing but about our code block. So the code block is nothing but the JavaScript statement which contains inside this curly bracket. So this is my starting curly bracket and this is my ending curly bracket. So the statements which are present under this curly bracket, so those are called as the JavaScript code blocks. And here like in my example I have just used 3 JavaScript statements or 3 lines of code, but you can use any line of code or any line of statement. So here the overall the concept is the JavaScript code blocks is nothing but about we can write any line of code inside the curly bracket, and at a time all those lines of codes will execute. This is all about our today's video. Thank you. Please do like and subscribe to our channel.